To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Everybody, and welcome to Talking Shop here on The Experience, where we love to show you guys some really cool books that are coming out very soon or just came out, or just enough time for you to not miss them at your local comic shop is what we're really hoping for at this point. We've got some amazing people lined up today with our favorite independent creators, Scout and SourcePoint. But up first is from Scout with his cool book, A King's Vengeance, is Peter Riek.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so tell me, did I get your last name correct?
Riek. Riek. Yeah, I love to say Riek, but it's Riek. It's from France, so even unless you pronounce it like the French way, which most people don't even bother in France because it's such a weird name. People always think I'm English because I have such an English name, but I'm not English. But I speak English properly, so it's very confusing. But Riek, yeah, that's just like Riek, R-I-C-K.
Perfect, because by heritage I am French, as you can tell from my nose.
Yeah. How is your French? Is it? Can you speak it well?
So horrible, so horrible. I understand and can read way more than I could ever speak. It's been since high school since I was ever put to the task. My French grandmother lived with us when I was in high school, so I got to use it all the time. But now,
yeah, my girlfriend, she won awards with her French speaking, and then she can barely speak it anymore.
Oh wow! What kind of awards? What would you win?
What did you win the award for your French speaking? In high school, some best speaking. French speaking in high school.
I wonder if it was because back in the day when I was in high school, they had these UIL meets where there were speech and debate and that kind of stuff. I wonder if it was one of those kinds of things. Those were tough, man. There was always the same kids that were always at the very top, and you're always just great, it's that kid again. So she was that kid.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
So this is awesome. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. It's weird because our store gets our books directly from Scout.
Oh, nice.
So ours kind of come weirdly. And we also, so we've got some things that happen. This is our variant for one of the networks I
nice.
Work with. And then, so we got that in really early.
Yeah.
And then I think last week was officially releases of this book, or we just got our regular order of the regular books. So
I think it was delayed, and it was supposed to probably come out at the same time, but it was delayed, and then it went out. Even though it was delayed, then it did come out. So a lot, because my comic shop, a local comic shop, 8th Dimension, he was also confused, oh yeah, no, I don't know when it doesn't say why it's delayed, but we're not going to have it in. And then I think even Scout was confused. So yeah, it's a whole COVID thing, everything is shutting down, and then we made it through the cracks somehow. But now it's out, so now we can talk about it.
So 8th Dimension from Houston?
No, from Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, okay. Because I was going, wait a minute, how can that be your local shop? Because there's an 8th Dimension that's here. I was like,
okay. Maybe there's a couple 8th Dimensions. For some reason, that's the title every indie comic shop uses. I wonder if they're affiliated. I don't know. I don't think so.
who knows? They probably don't know it. Well, I mean, if you're from a different country, I don't know if you like look up business names to try to make sure you're not.
Yeah,
like,
you know what? I'm gonna ask him this week.
don't get them mad at each other.
Yeah.
So it's been exciting to see this book kind of like roll out. It really, when you have like an amorphous release date, it kind of actually is an advantage because you can put it as it's new on the rack like every week for 3 weeks.
Oh, nice. Okay, I didn't think about that.
That's accurate.
Sweet.
So did you? I see only your name on it. So this to me means that you wrote it and did the art for it. Is this true?
So my friend Davila, my name is on the cover because I did the whole undertaking, and it was something that I had in mind when I was really, really young. I wanted to see like some sort of vampire, because I was obsessed with Conan the Barbarian and RoboCop and all that. Now I want to see like an antagonist hero who was maybe a bloodsucker vampire and had a knight. I was somewhat of a knight and a Ronin. And instead of riding horses, he rode a raptor, a giant raptor. And I pitched that idea to my friend who we did a TV show together.
Yeah.
And he came up with, because he was actually reading the Conan comics that came out 10 years ago, the newer ones.
Yep, the Marvel series.
Yeah, so he was super into that world, and then he could come up with the first. It was going to be a movie because we were writing movies at that time, and so Davila wrote that, and then we worked on the rest of the story together, which would be the other books. Which hopefully, if this success, like I'll have time to do it. It's just like comic books just are, even though it's easy to read and it's fun to read and you read it fast. To do an issue, it takes so much time, and the return is never great unless you're like 1 in a million. Hopefully this does have somewhat of success, so we can tell the rest of the story because it is really good and it is developed and it's ready to go. It's just the time management of actually putting it together. So like Davila, he left Canada. He moved to the States where he married his wife, and he hasn't even thought about it or like pushed or anything. And I did a lot of research, and I was going to get another artist to draw it, and just put a lot of time and effort and developing the story and the visuals and going back from scratch and redoing it again. And after doing my Once Our Land comic book, it just took so long to make the comic. I just thought this is not feasible to do it again because I lost so much money, even though the Once Our Land one was a success. Okay, the second one, I put so much more time and money, and it wasn't as big of a success. So I just couldn't afford to do that again. And so I was, researching how I can do it still very cool, efficiently. And I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out, King's Vengeance. And one of my friends who, when I was telling him how I was doing it, he thought it was a big mistake. And then when he saw the finished product, he actually preferred the drawings in King's Vengeance more than Once Our Land. So yes, hopefully people feel the same way. But you can't please everybody, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So walk people through what it means to do your own comic book. Like you're saying that it's very expensive. What parts about making a comic do people not even have their mind wrapped around that? Because they're just thinking about just photocopy it at the FedEx. They're not thinking about all the expenses that are involved. What is in there that people don't think about always?
Okay, so I mean, writing is probably the easiest, but to get feedback is really hard because nobody wants to read a script and they can't visualize it. So you have to trust your own gut that what you wrote is actually the right story and the proper way to tell the story. So even though it is probably the fastest and easiest part, it's probably the one that you can get the least feedback that is probably accurate. So it's kind of scary, like, because then the next step is to do the designs. It's a lot of time. See what you think would be efficient and worth something that you want to draw over and over again and will have fun doing. And then you got to design the pages, and you got to stick to the pages so you're not doing more. Because sometimes you draw like 30 pages, but it's like too quick. You want the reader to have fun and not question what's okay, what happened between panel 1 and 2? Like, I feel like there's a gap missing. So you have to make sure everything ends well. Every page should have a question mark at the end, so people want to read the next page. And then once you design all the pages, then you have to draw them properly with all the detail. And then even drawing the panels, just the panels takes a while. And then when all that's all done, you do the coloring. The coloring with the King's Vengeance, I found a way to do it inspired by Magnolia that took me a day and an hour and a half as opposed to 3 days. That's what it took for One Star Land. And I really like the way it looks. And just reading Hellboy, I was like, oh, this is so simple and so great, and it's really easy to read. And I'm sure I can add a few things to like flare it up a bit, because I'm like a Photoshop genius. I guess I've been doing it for so long. I'm really fast. And then when that's all done, is the bubbles and making sure you had the right spacing, so it's not all cluttered and easy to read, and the spacing of the bubbles. And then when you're all done all that, you have to do you got to find a distributor, or you got to distribute yourself, and then the printing, and then you got to do all the PR yourself or pay somebody. So like doing a comic book takes me about a year to 3 years. And you also have to work on whatever else job you have. So you're doing half-half. So it's expensive. That's one of the expensive things. It's just the time management and putting everything else aside for half your day. And then, once you do your own distribution and PR, it's a lot of work, a lot of videos, calling people, make sure you get reviewed. Yeah. And nobody wants to read it, It's hard to get people to read your stuff.
It's tough. I know it is, because there's so much out there.
Exactly.
To try to, like, if you're trying to reach retailers, which I am one, that to try to figure out which ones are open to carrying independent books that aren't Marvel and DC, and which ones are they call indie friendly, and who would actually give it space on a shelf, and who would read it and actually, be able to recommend it. I know it's got to be this crazy thing to try to figure out on your end always.
And also for artists, it's like, hey, I'll do a book launch at your shop, and I'll be there. And there's like, well, for me to do that, I'll sell like 20 books. It's not worth my time. But then like one artist, he did that, and then he got really famous from working with Marvel and everything. And then that same shop was asking him, it's like, hey, you said you wanted to do things, like, well, now it's not worth my time, because so it's just hard to see how can we work together so it works out for everyone. It's just it never works.
It feels like it should be a very symbiotic relationship. That's right. We need the books to sell. I would think it's much nicer to be able to know the person who's making it, to make a personal connection between the book and the customer base. It's got to be so much better than just the general pitch for something. Is I think that them saying, hey, I know Peter, this book is cool, is different than there's a cool book on the shelf.
I'm lucky with my comic shop, Eighth Dimension. There's a few other ones, but Eighth Dimension is my favorite. And he's always promoting the local artist books, and he'll tell his customers about them. And you actually have him on a shelf for just locals.
I love it.
I'm guessing you do something similar.
Oh yeah, Our store's got like 550 facing comic books right now. So
wow, that's amazing.
If I had space, I'd have more.
Yeah.
I think it makes a difference that I, as a store owner, am also a super fan of comic books. And so I read them and want to have other people read them so I can talk to them about them, because it's kind of like that the water cooler effect.
Yeah.
It's like the comic book store is a place where everyone should gather like cheers and talk about their favorite things.
Yeah, and I find it's hard for me because I have some friends that read comic books, but not much. But I try to talk to them, and I try to send them the book. Like, you need to read this. Like, Punk Rock Jesus is one of my favorite comics, and trying to shove it down people's throats.
Yeah. Just give it as presents to every person, right?
Just bring it with you everywhere.
Yeah. You said No Man's Land. Is that the very first project that you did?
No Man's Land. We did with Dracula. He had an idea called 912 Crew, and it had to do with No Man's Land.
Oh,
is that what you're referring to?
I didn't know if there was anything that came before. So tell us all the other cool projects you've worked on.
So I created a TV show for kids called The League of Super Evil, and that's where I first started working with Dracula and Phil, and then we were working on other stuff like feature film ideas and live action shows, and people would not even want to meet with us. Like Sci-Fi Channel would say, "You're actually making fun of our fans by making fun of vampires." It's like, well, no, I mean, we're all dorks and we love to make fun of things we love.
Yep.
It's like, well, you guys do animation, right? So kids cartoons, why don't you just do that? It's like, no, well, we're creators, we're like filmmakers, we do everything. So it was just really frustrating. And then after that, I focused on my band and doing the music videos for that, and doing live action music videos to get away from animation. And I also started doing comic books. So Once Our Land was, oh yeah, that's what you said. No Man's Land. You meant Once Our Land.
I'm sorry, man.
So now, yeah, as I tell a story, I can hear it. And that was with Scout Comics. So I did it on my own, and Scout Comics then published it, and it was on like the sought after list, and some books were selling for 200 online. So it was crazy. And the local comic shop, when I told him my comic, he's like, "Oh, you're the guy who did that book." So then he started being very friendly with me because he was like happy that a local guy. So Once Our Land, then I did the second one, and that's where I thought it was going to be such a success like the first one, with all the fans continuing and reissuing the first, but it wasn't. And I took about half a year off to work on the book, and then still hired people and all that. So it was hard.
But
and
it's
then
beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. It's just a timing, and it's hard. Like you can have, just like the movie is The Thing, the remake, it was a big flop. And what's another one recently that I can't remember, but it happens all the time. Some of the best movies, some of the best books are never the success that it should have been. And then I did, because I also started writing more movies, and I got a horror movie made called Dead Shack.
I love minifigures, Noah.
Oh, cool.
And then so trying to branch away from just a kids cartoons thing. And then with Once Our Land,
Lego City
it's more,
hey guys.
it's more teenager kid friendly, and I wanted to do A King's Vengeance, which would be a comic book but for more mature audience with how violent it is.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So awesome. So comic books for you.
Yeah.
Were they a first love, like when you were a kiddo, or did you discover them later in life?
So when I was very young, I was reading Tintin and all the French comics, like Spirou et Fantasio, Blueberry by Mobius. We had some real weird ones because my dad's friend used to lend us comic books. And then I started reading the Marvel stuff. I was obsessed with Wolverine and X-Men. And my parents, they thought it was like burning my money away. They thought it was like buying drugs to them for some reason. And so I had to do it in hiding. So when they left the house with us and go buy comics, and I had a big stash underneath my bed. And then in college, I had a friend who was way older, and he lent me Preacher. Another friend lent me Akira, the comic book.
Yes.
Lent me The Dark Knight. And then I started falling in love with comics again because I was reading the proper material. And I was also reading, Yeah. And Battle Angel Alita, the comic, it was on sale like 80% off, so I bought like $5, and I was obsessed with that as well. And I was really excited to hear that James Cameron bought the rights, and I was waiting for 20 years for that movie to get made, and then it got made, and it really wasn't to my expectations. But
Oh
I'm
no.
sure a lot of people felt the same way, especially people who read the comic. But my brother, who had never read the comic, he really loved the movie, so it was just I had really such high expectations, and it was a book I held really close to my heart. And then yeah, I have like a bit. You can see a bit of my
Oh, there
comic.
you go.
Oh wait, there you go.
That's a great collection.
Yeah.
And organized.
Yeah, and I gave a lot of them away because I had the Watchmen, and I've had a bunch of ones. Before I moved to Vancouver, I was from Montreal, and I gave a bunch of them away, hopefully to get people into comic books.
Yeah, so you were being the good friend that your friends weren't you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was funny because my friend who gave me the comic books, I would give it back to him like not in mint condition. It's like, I'm so sorry, I'll buy you a new one. I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm just glad you read it. So
he had the right relationship with comic books. I love it. All right, let's talk about A King's Vengeance.
Okay.
My favorite part is the fact that he just like hops on dinosaurs and rides them, but I also like the big rivalry thing. It's just like, okay, well, I'm just going to go by myself and go do battle. Mm-hmm. Why not? Because that's what leaders do, right?
Good leaders. But you do understand why he does it, because it's more close to it's what do you call that? It's more close to him than the other characters. Mm-hmm. It's more involved with like his life. Yeah. Because the bad guy took his family, his son, and killed the wife. So for him, it was more. I can't find the word I'm looking for. I'm sure.
Is it like it's more personal because it's
personal? There you go. It's more personal. That's such a simple word.
Trust me. The last 2 years, if there's a simple word to be lost, I'll lose it.
Yeah. And then, and also, he doesn't have a family to come back to, and the few soldiers left, they do have a family that's home waiting for them. So it just makes sense for him to actually do the last stretch on his own. Mm-hmm. It was fun. What was annoying is that by the time I was done the book, it was so hard to find reference of people riding raptors as a knight. And then Primal, Gendy Tarkovsky's Primal, Tarkovsky, the guy from Samurai Jack. Yes. I bought the series and was like, oh, those are all the references I was looking for. Yeah. But now if I do the sequel, I have all the references I need. So maybe it'll go even faster to draw the book. Perfect. Yeah.
So I like my personal preference for a hero or an anti-hero, either one is fine by me, is a damaged character. So that's why this book is really cool. So like I don't want them to be damaged and like they're like secretly evil. It isn't good for me, but like the people are really trying to overcome like a big thing in their life, like he is.
And you'll see it like if we do make the other ones, you will learn more about him as a king, what he did that like his people weren't really happy with. Because I mean, a fierce leader sometimes have to make big decisions that not everyone is happy with.
Yeah.
And hopefully, outcome would be good. But as you can see, like at the beginning, like the battle has almost killed everybody, and that's what war does. Yeah.
And so I love the art style on this because it's just so unique.
Thanks.
I mean, if it was like everything else, I think it might have lost something. But we've made really great choices for it.
Thanks. I was really happy with it, and to draw it myself and find a way that I could do things fast was challenging at first, but to do it in a way that I'm actually really happy with, and I'm starting to draw more like that because I like it. I like the way it looks so much, as opposed to what I did with Once Our Land. It was way more detailed, and I find it made it harder to read. And I like how simple this one is. It's just like so easy to know what's happening, because I find drawing simple is way tougher than drawing detailed. Yeah. And I think that's why people like Mike Mignola so much. And the guy who draws Headlopper, what's his name? McLean?
Yes.
Andrew McLean? Is that his name?
I think that's right.
I have his book here.
My brain tells me that's at least really close.
He also did Apocalyptic
Apocalyptic
Girl. That was a good one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so that was a good one. Andrew McLean. Yeah. Yeah, so looking at his work was like very inspiring too. I just love the way it looks, and again, so easy to read. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, so how many issues does this run, this series?
So this one right now, it's only 2 issues. I don't even. Can you show me where it ends? Like, I don't even know where the story ends. Because I had it when he's on a chair, but I think Scout wanted to do it differently.
Trash heap.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a good way to end it too. So the next issue is going to be, I think, a bit longer, and there's going to be way more action.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so
the long journey of like carrying the ring to Mordor. Then he's gonna get after it for the next one, huh?
So yeah, the next one, I think it's dropping in 2 months.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the way they do it. They do the first book, and then they wait a couple months for everyone to be able to add it to their polls so they don't miss it.
Okay. And yeah, and then after that, I think there will also be a making of, I think, in the second book. So you can see the whole process, the other artists I had involved, and I explain where the story comes from. Those are usually my favorite parts of books, because it makes it, you see how much work it is, and you can see how you can also do it, and how some ideas do take a long time to come to fruition. So I like those parts a lot. I think it's very inspiring. And hopefully, you know, our audience do enjoy the book, and they want to read more and see more. And yeah, who knows? Well, only time will tell.
I'm sure it's true. So Peter, where should people reach out to you to follow you, to see what's coming up next, and be familiar with all your other work?
Yeah, you can follow me at my Instagram. It's Prick, P-R-I-C-Q. It's my first name is Peter. My last name is Riek. So I chose the worst name for a Instagram account, because I am not a prick, but that is my name. Yeah, so you can DM me there. You can find me at Peter Riek, R-I-C-Q, 2 R's, Peter, and then RICQ, .com. You could see the music videos I've done, movie trailers I've done, my artwork as painter, as illustrator, as art director. You can find out about my bands, and yeah.
That's the best way to do it. Go check it all out after.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm looking forward to the next issue, though it's going to take a long time to wait, but that's kind of like the merit that you want to have, right?
Yeah, it'll be a good wait. Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff happening in the second issue.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you had a really good holiday, and hope the weather's good up there and isn't snowing you in too terribly.
It's actually really cold.
We're not used to it. 81 here today.
Yeah. How much is -1 for you guys?
It's 81. I'm wearing shorts.
Okay. Oh, you're so lucky. I'm so sad. I was in Mexico a month ago, so I got to experience that.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
everyone stick around. There's more to see. Got another guest coming up next. See you then.
Today's comics market is ripe with new titles by creators who are determined to get their books into your hands. My name is Henri Compen. For the last decade, I've been making and selling my own creator-owned comics and dealing as a collector in live sales. My signature series, Yi Sun Shin, is the book that cannot be defeated in battle and has over 250,000 copies in print. Now I'm taking comics to the next level and laying the groundwork for my fellow creators to get their voices heard so they can connect directly with you. This is your chance to engage live with top comic book talent and get your comics signed without having to wait in long lines or pay any fees. But remember, we only have a limited amount of their books in stock, so always remember to call it as you see it.
Everybody, and welcome back. That was an awesome interview. It's so interesting. Every time that I do an interview, I try like crazy to find everything I can about a person so that I can kind of like talk about all the aspects of their life, because I found that a great many comic creators are also super talented in other ways. And I just did not get to find what I needed for that last interview. I did not know so many things that Peter knows how to do that are other than comic books. So I do recommend that you guys go hunt down his website so you can see all of his other stuff at Peter Riek, which is was it RICQ.com. So you can see all of his other creative things. Now we get to talk to my friend Richard Davis, who's got an amazing second series coming out featuring the Dracula Mafia.
Pretty much.
All right, so tell everybody how well received the first series was. What was your feedback for that series?
Cult of Dracula was exceptionally well received. It was one of the top comics of 2021. We sold out every single issue at Diamond, and the trade paperback is doing very, very well. I believe on League of Comic Geeks, it's got a consistent for the entire series, an 8.5 positive rating. So reviewers and readers alike are enjoying it and loving it. And it's a great time because a lot of people, now that the trade is out, a lot of people are discovering it again for the first time. So it's really cool. I'm hearing a lot of feedback from people, and really, really excited with how it went with Cult of Dracula, and that opened up a lot of doors so that I'm able to tell the complete story. And now we're expecting Rise of Dracula to be even more popular than Cult. It's also almost sold out at Diamond. I think there's somewhere around 300 copies left for retailers to order, and it doesn't even hit the shelves until Wednesday of this week. So it's one of those go out and get it from your local comic book shop, or you're probably not going to be able to unless we decide to do a second print, which is a strong possibility, I think.
So this, my memory tells me that this also happened with Cult, that there were some issues that before the book released, it was already pre-sold out at Diamonds. There wasn't anywhere that stores could move to increase their numbers. So
no, this was one of those, Cult of Dracula was one of those books that if you didn't get it when you saw it, you didn't get it. Because it just, for whatever reason, it just caught fire, and we sold a ridiculous number of copies of Cult of Dracula #1. It was the cover of issue 1 was chosen as the badge art for New York Comic Con, and it was named. We did a preview of Rise of Dracula as a New York Comic Con exclusive, and 2 of the major websites picked it up named it their spec pick of New York Comic Con. So we're really excited. The entire creative team is pumped. We're glad that we get to tell this story, and we're super glad that people are actually reading it.
Oh yeah, it's do you have people like talk to you at conventions that are like, this was my first book? Did anyone say that they were inspired to read books?
Yeah, that's a really cool thing when you're doing a comic book about a historically well-known character like Dracula. It comes with its own built-in audience base that might be, they might not be hardcore comic fans. We get a lot of librarians, believe it or not, love Cult of Dracula. So I got a lot of those that come see me at conventions this year. I did kind of a whirlwind convention tour in 2021. I think there was at one point I traveled for 15 straight weeks to different conventions and store signings. There were times literally I would wake up and I wouldn't know what city I was in. So I was living that rock star life without all the sex, drugs, and money. But yeah, it's been really cool.
Did the librarians like it because you took some of the historical characters and kept them, but gave them non-traditional roles?
Exactly. A lot of them would compare it to books like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, or Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. And I love those books too, because they take unique looks at classic stories, things that we know really, really well. And you can take the characters and you can put them into these different situations and stay true to who they are, but you're also able to tell a different, kind of expanded story. And so, yeah, Cult of Dracula definitely fell into that realm. And Rise of Dracula, kind of the same, but completely different.
Oh, yeah. To go along with that, just so if anyone's like, oh, I read those two and I need another one, I think there's one called Android Karenina. It's also really good.
I haven't read that one yet, but it looks really, really cool. And then Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, I love that one.
Oh, yeah. But don't think that you're gonna. Well, I guess we're all serious. So yes, it will still be in the same vein. They weren't poking fun at any of that stuff. They told real serious tales.
Yeah, they treated it like it was a real thing, and I loved that approach to it. They took kind of a ridiculous premise and treated it very, very seriously.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Cult of Dracula dealt very specifically with the kind of like I would say that the power structure of the involved characters. Mm-hmm. Is there anything different that gets changed about Rise? Obviously, it takes place before, but
everything is different in Rise of Dracula. It's a different tone, it's a different pace, it's a different style of storytelling. And thanks, Rob. I'm glad you love those covers. I got to work with some great cover artists. And we're going to work with a lot more on Rise of Dracula, so stay tuned for that. Whereas I would look at, I come from a film background, so I look at Cult of Dracula as kind of a Tobe Hooper film. It's very intimate. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's Southern Gothic, focused on this core group of characters. And we're just introducing you to this world that they exist in. Rise of Dracula takes place 10 years later, and it expands the world greatly. We're now building a very wide world. We're bringing in a lot of different vampires, a lot of different types of vampires. We're bringing in vampire hunters for the first time. So I look at it as more of a John Carpenter style film, from New York, things like that. So I think Rise is probably going to have a much broader appeal than Cult did, because Cult of Dracula was kind of niche. You have to be into Southern Gothic horror, but Rise of Dracula is a lot more action-packed. It moves at a faster pace. It's a story told in more of a linear way. The entire story takes place within like a 3-month period, whereas in Cult of Dracula, I mean, we started in the modern day and we went literally all the way back to the Garden of Eden. I learned a little bit from writing Cult. Cult, if I could go back and change Cult in any way, it would be to not lean so heavily into the broken narrative. I now understand why Quentin Tarantino was such a master in Pulp Fiction, which I tried to emulate. And it was very, very difficult to tell that story that way. So when we get to Rise of Dracula, it's very, it's a linear story. It's, you're following an easy to follow progression of the plot, and with a lot more action and a lot more blood and gore.
Ooh, so you get all serious.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's no secret because people have seen it from at New York Comic Con, the exclusive we put out, but it opens with the genocide of Washington, D.C. So, I mean, literal genocide.
Is this the movie version where at the end of that sequence, everyone cheers?
Maybe. There is a great panel that I absolutely love. And it's an homage to the 92 film Bram Stoker's Dracula. But we get in front of the Supreme Court and you see the Supreme Court justices, they're on spikes. So there's a little nod to that, to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I adore it. And yeah, it's really cool. We're throughout the book, we kind of get to explore the death of democracy and the rise of authoritarianism. And just like in real life, no one's the villain in their own story. And Dracula firmly and fervently believes that she's saving the world. But the only way to save the world is to basically eliminate 2/3 of the population. And whereas in other books, in other films and things like that, they're not willing to actually go there. We actually go there. We actually get to the point where, we're decimating the entire population of a city, and we're reducing the human population down to soldiers, labor, food, and pets. And that's it. If you don't fall into one of those categories, you're gone.
Okay, so knowing this, do any of our characters from the first storyline as humans, do any of them carry over? And
yes.
If not, do we get new ones that are like, okay, well, I'll identify.
You get both. So obviously we're following Dracula and her sister Lucy. We introduce a new character named Carmilla, who is going to be a very interesting character. Very complex with, she's kind of modeled off of Cardinal Richelieu, which he's famous for Louis XIV and the French Academy. He was kind of the power behind the throne type thing. So she's a really fun new character. Jonathan and Arthur, they've formed sort of a resistance movement. So they're trying to get refugees out of DC and also mount a resistance against Dracula. We get introduced to, there are 5 great houses of vampires, and the House of Dracula is one, but there are 4 others, and each one of them is inspired by a type of vampire from a different culture. So we go to Filipino lore, we go to African lore. So it's not just your standard Eastern European white guy in a tuxedo vampires. So that's been really fun to kind of explore that and to tell this story.
See, that appeals to me, to bring in all the other cultural vampires. Is it too much to say whether those vampires are able to work together, or are they always opposed?
So it's kind of like if you know your American mafia history, where Lucky Luciano kind of brought the 5 families together to form a commission. And that's what Dracula is setting out to do in the beginning. And she is very powerful, just like Lucky Luciano was, and very persuasive. So she's able to at least bring them to the table. Of course, they're vampires, so each one of them, they're going to have their own agendas and things like that that we get to explore and see. And we also bring the brides back because they were everybody's favorite characters from Cult. But they are in a much more prominent and powerful role. Dracula promised them at the end of Cult of Dracula that they could be free. And so, because in Cult, they had kind of been almost slaves to the previous Dracula. They were her heralds and servants. But in Rise of Dracula, they get a lot more autonomy. And that may not always work to Dracula's benefit.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like having a bunch of exes around.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you just give your exes control of giant military forces, and and see what happens.
I love worlds like this because you start to imagine what part in the world that you would likely fit into, even though like, you can't say I would be a vampire because you can't like choose, but
right.
I haven't really wrapped my mind around it for your story, because there's so many of them that have such rich characters. It's like hard to choose.
Yeah, I love, I've really enjoyed doing the research to create these characters. I've studied not only mythology and folklore about vampires, but also literature, stories that we've told about vampires. So every vampire that you see in Rise of Dracula, just like in Cult of Dracula, is based on a vampire that exists in either folklore, literature, or mythology. And we really get to expand that world. And what's been really cool about it is the world just keeps getting bigger and more complex. So that's been fun. And now we've decided that we were originally going to do 3 volumes of 6 issues. And now I realize I can't tell this story. I can't tell the story I want to tell with Rise of Dracula in just 6 issues. So we've now decided that we're going to do we're going to do 2 volumes. So there'll now be 4 total volumes of the Dracula saga here, because it's the story. The characters told me that they wanted to tell a bigger story than I set out to tell, and the characters are the boss, so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the only other way really to do it, if you had more to tell, is to tell it in flashback in another series.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's something you need to have established for the next series, that won't work.
Yeah. And it's just, when you're limited to, 24 pages in an issue and 6 issues, I could have cut corners, and I could have cut some of the side stories and some of the side characters and not followed those plot lines. But honestly, I found them too interesting. For example, the Ruthven sisters, which we meet in issue 1 at the very end, Ellie, Babs, and Lara, they were so interesting and so compelling that I started writing about them a lot, and I realized, oh wow, I've kind of ignored the brides, I've ignored Van Helsing, so I've really got to go back and tell some of these stories. And so yeah, the story just keeps expanding. I kind of get George R.R. Martin, how he was originally going to do 3 books, and then it was 4 books, and then it was 5, and then 7, and now I think he said he wants to write 10. So yeah, it's an ever expanding story, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as Source Point will allow me to do so.
Yeah, I think they're going to let you keep going as long as they have people that want to read them, of course.
Absolutely. Hey, if we keep selling, I think they're going to let me keep writing.
So, have you you've been to a lot of conventions and other like stores and things? Have you had anybody do any cosplay of your characters yet?
Not yet, but I am hoping to do. I mean, I will flip out if somebody comes and does cosplay as one of my characters. I mean, that would be the coolest thing. And I think the Ruthven sisters might be the characters that inspire cosplay, especially Ellie. Ellie Ruthven is probably going to be everybody's favorite character. When I describe her, I like to say, imagine if the Joker and Harley Quinn did bath salts and made a meth-addicted schizophrenic baby. That would be Ellie. I mean, she is insane, and she's violent and brutal and cruel, but she's really, really funny. And I love the dynamic between the 3 Ruthven sisters, because you get to throw out, I get to throw in every movie reference that I've ever wanted, that I love, because I've decided that Babs and Lara especially really enjoy pop culture and movies. So in issue 1, you get references to Scarface and Cool World, and all kinds of films. It's just really fun to write those characters.
And it thrills people that are reading it, because those kind of touchstones to things that they love outside of the comic book makes us like it even more, because it makes us feel really smart. Like, I understand, like Captain America would say, I understand that reference.
Yeah, it's been really, and that's something I just keep keep rolling with, and that's just become kind of a cornerstone of who those characters are. They get to play the role of kind of the gravediggers from Hamlet, where anytime you see the Roofman sisters, there's going to be a little humor to the scene, because there's only so much blood, gore, violence, and seriousness you can take. And so, you throw the gravediggers in there, and they're making fun of Yorick's skull and all this, and and then you get back to murdering Laertes and everybody in the King's Court.
Okay, so for Rise, are we seeing a distinct focus on the vampire tale of what's going on, or are there storylines that you're going to trail into that are the human response to what's going on around them, if they ever realize that that's what's happening, is they're being exterminated / used? Do you have equal balance?
It's a fairly equal balance. Most of the story is told either from the vampire's point of view or the media's point of view. So how the media is covering the events. The use of social media and traditional media plays a huge role. Van Helsing's job now, at the end of Rise of Dracula, instead of killing him, Dracula basically promoted him and gave him a job because he's not burdened by morals. So he is kind of he is the propaganda minister for the Ordo Dracul. And so it's all about how he controls the narrative. And so I wanted to explore the fact, how the media we consume can be very biased. The truth isn't always the truth, but it's still the truth, just from a different angle. So that's been really fun. And then we do introduce the resistance movement, and we also introduce the vampire hunters, which are kind of a play on the Knights Templar. So through their eyes, we get to see the human aspect of things.
Okay, good. Gosh, it sounds like you've thought of all the ways that people would desire to see this story told.
I tried. I definitely tried. Any good DM in D&D knows you can't prepare for everything your players are going to want to do. But I've definitely I've given it the good old college try, and we get to look at things we actually even get to look at things from the perspective of heaven and hell. So how they see things differently. And there's an issue where we actually get to go to a roller derby disco in hell. So yeah, that's the reaction I want everybody to have to that. And it's everything you're imagining. I mean, imagine the titty twister from Dusk Till Dawn and the roller rink from Xanadu, and put those together, and hey, it's what we got.
That sounds awesome. Okay, so you just made me think of something.
Yeah.
You can't say the words D&D and Cult of Dracula without maybe thinking, maybe you should tap someone to write an RPG in your universe.
I would love that. And you would think the fact that my publisher also is under the same corporate umbrella as a game developer, you think those things would go hand in hand. So those folks at Deepwater Gaming who are watching right now, hit me up. We got a best-selling comic. Why don't we make a best-selling pen and paper tabletop game?
It'd be a no-brainer, right? Because people already like the characters, and just like I say, when you want to identify with somebody, this allows you to fully identify as somebody.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Vampire the Masquerade and Vampire the Dark Ages, two of my favorite games. I really enjoyed Requiem as well. So I love everything they did at White Wolf. And so if it worked for them, we could have another type of tabletop game, because you can never have enough role-playing games in the world.
No, you can't. No lie, this will tell you how deep my nerddom goes. In the 90s, when I had my first store, there was a group that played Masquerade that would rent out an entire elementary school.
Wow.
And we would, the game was the entire campus. So the council would be in the lunchroom, and you didn't know what was going on for that part of the story at all. You could be hanging out in the quad. It was
because you weren't privy to that.
So true. You just like at the end of the game, you'd be like, okay, what happened?
You're like, wow.
Because you remember it was like if you got stabbed, someone handed you like a piece of paper with a knife on it, you know.
You're like, I love LARPs, man, and I love to watch them, you know, because the people, they get so invested and it's fun, and they do cosplay, and it's really fun. I'm an old school D&D player. I love that type of thing. I've never really been into LARPing, which you would think I would naturally want to be, since I have a degree in theater. I was an actor for many years, but LARPing has just never done it for me, but I love to watch it. I like to do my role playing at the table with dice and things. But yeah, I think Cult of Dracula, Rise of Dracula, this world kind of lends itself to a tabletop game, and yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for different types of media. You know, we're still working on a television series. So a board game would be kind of cool.
Oh, I think it would be amazing. All right. We've run out of time. So where should everyone follow you? Where's the best place to get the up-to-date information?
Yeah, so we're on all social media platforms at Cult of Dracula, and we're thinking about changing the name to reflect now that we're moving into Rise of Dracula, but our followers have kind of rebelled against that, so we may keep it Cult of Dracula and add something to it. But yeah, it's just at Cult of Dracula on everything, so you can find us there. Oh, and one thing before I forget, if you are a comic book retailer, either online or brick and mortar, it doesn't matter. SourcePoint Press and we are doing a special thank you variant to all the retailers who have supported Cult of Dracula and Rise of Dracula. So I hired Javon Jordan out of my own pocket and paid for the printing costs for this variant. And all the retailers have to do is go to our social media site or wherever, click on a link that takes them to a SurveyMonkey. They just enter their shipping information, and that's it. You get a free, gorgeous variant by Javon Jordan, who's one of the hottest up-and-coming cover artists in the business. I absolutely love working with him, and I love his style. And I think we're going to do a lot together. So this one is just a thank you to the retailers, because I couldn't be where I am without you guys. So I wanted to do something to show my appreciation and help you guys make money. So if you're a retailer, hit that survey up, enter your shipping information, and we're going to send you this gorgeous cover that hopefully you can sell to one of your customers and make profit in January.
There you have it, everybody. You know that you're a local comic shop. You should tell them, poke them, to remind them to look out for this email. I always think those emails are fun, because it's like when I get them and I read them, I'm like, oh, I wonder how many people are going to get that email and not remember to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like, because people, they just skip the emails sometimes. And, that in this case, you're going to be missing out if you don't. And also, if you're a retailer, somebody go and order those last 300 copies that are at Diamond. We want them sold out.
Ooh. Sounds like a personal challenge.
Yeah. Who's going to do it? Who's got the bravery to go and order those last 300 copies?
There you go. Run, don't walk.
And hit up your local comic shop, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rich.
Thank you. Always good stuff.
Remember, everybody, to add it to your pull box, because of the name change. You want to make sure that they don't assume that because it doesn't say Cult of Dracula that you're not interested in getting the next one. So make sure that they understand that there's a name change, so you don't miss that at all. Because there's nothing more heartbreaking than showing up at your local comic shop and they're like, "Ah, we
didn't order enough and we can't get more."
Because Jen bought them all. Ah,
right.
Everybody,
if you buy them all, I'll sign them for you.
Oh, cool. I like that.
I do. I sign for free. I have people mailing me books literally every day. Like, I just go down. I've got a little office at my shop, and I just go in, and there's a stack that I'm signing, and all you got to do is send me the book in a return label. I'll sign it and send it back to you.
Oh, that's class act right there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Talking Shop. Please support all these awesome creators as they're pouring their heart out onto the page for you each and every month. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.